Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tangmen based on novel. So let's start. Should we inform the military? They can think of a way to bring that surveillance soul tool down. Dai Luotli said. Huo Yuhao shook his head and replied, there's no need to. We can do it ourselves. Haven't you flown before? I'll let you experience what it's like to soar in the sky. Dai Luotli didn't even have 4 rings yet, and couldn't use flying-type soul tools. Naturally, he hadn't flown before. Before he could even react, Huo Yuhao placed one hand under his armpit, and Dai Luotli felt the light around him distorting slightly. He and Huo Yuhao rose up, and quickly flew into the sky. He almost shouted because it was too sudden. Elder brother, you are too brazen. We'll be shot down. Dai Luotli tried his best to suppress his voice as he spoke to Huo Yuhao. He was shocked when he turned around to look at Huo Yuhao. This was because there was no flying-type soul tool on his back. This meant that Huo Yuhao was propelling them through his own soul power. What did this mean? It meant that Huo Yuhao was at least a soul sage. Elder brother, are you really only 1 year older than me? Dai Luotli was almost speechless. A 19-year-old soul sage. This is too unbelievable. Huo Yuhao smiled and replied, yes. Didn't you see my original appearance? Do I look that old? Dai Luotli's eyes brightened. Elder brother, you're a genius. Huo Yuhao recalled Shrek's motto and answered, no, I'm a monster. At this point, Dai Luotli realized that there wasn't any reaction from Imperial Radiant City. There was no sign of any attacks directed towards the sky. However, he didn't know why nothing was happening. I specialize in spiritual power. My martial soul is my eyes. It's spiritual type martial soul. I have a soul skill that can conceal me. It's like cloaking my body. I've already cloaked us and hidden our auras. They won't discover us, Huo Yuhao patiently explained to his younger brother. Dai Luotli was enlightened. He looked down and realized that the city was becoming smaller and smaller from their point of view. However, he couldn't sense any air currents flowing against him. It was very exciting. It feels really good to fly. I must work harder. Once I obtain 4 rings, I can finally use flying-type soul tools. Dai Luotli said excitedly. Huo Yuhao chortled, it's exciting, right? It's very exciting. The feeling of flying is extremely good. Dai Luotli replied sincerely. Huo Yuhao said, there are even more exciting things. I'll tell you about them later. As he spoke, he opened his butterfly wings and flew even higher into the sky. They were already beyond the region that the surveillance soul tools in Imperial Radiant City could detect. It was fine for Huo Yuhao to use his flying-type soul tool now. Given his abilities, it was impossible to fly up to 3,000 meters in the air, especially since he was carrying another person right now. Details of Imperial Radiant City had become extremely tiny by now. In the dark, they even slowly disappeared. Everything around them was pitch black now. They didn't feel any air flowing against them, either. Dai Luotli felt like everything was a bit unreal. It was like he had entered another world under Huo Yuhao's guidance. It took some time to fly 3,000 meters into the air. Huo Yuhao discovered that his soul power was being drained more and more after he crossed the 1,000-meter mark. Fortunately, he had the help of his flying-type soul tool. However, the soul power in his flying-type soul tool would also be greatly drained the higher he went. With the help of a few milk bottles, Huo Yuhao managed to keep up with the amount of soul power that was being drained. However, they rose at a slower speed because of it. Huo Yuhao's spiritual power had long locked onto that high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tool. The complexity of this soul tool meant it qualified as a Class 8 soul tool. It could be controlled from afar, and remain in the air for surveillance at an extremely high altitude. This was definitely the future developmental direction of surveillance. After more than 10 minutes, Huo Yuhao finally brought Dai Luotli in front of this surveillance soul tool, which was the current highest technological standard. This high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tool was like a huge ball. The bottom was made using synthetic quartz, while there were 4 metal sails on the top of it, which helped to balance it in the air. There were 12 milk bottles installed into these 4 sails. These milk bottles were used to replenish the soul power being drained by this soul tool. When this soul tool flew along, these sails were retracted. After it reached its location, these sails would then open up to balance it. In addition, this soul tool could even adjust its angle and position in the air to deal with inclement weather. The Sun Moon Empire had taken many years to research this, and only completed it after the sealed milk bottles were invented. Otherwise, it couldn't be used long term. Huo Yuhao smiled, and golden light shone in his eyes. Dai Luoli immediately saw tremendous, distorted undulations around this surveillance soul tool. This surveillance soul tool didn't emit any light, and thus was almost invisible at night. However, these distorted rays were a dim gold, which made them extremely obvious. Right now, Dai Luoli could clearly see what this high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tool looked like. Its diameter was only around 2 meters. It started to shake slightly as the distorting rays appeared, as if it were struggling. It was a pity for it that Huo Yuhao's spiritual power had reached the concrete material realm, and he was using his spiritual interference. This soul tool's struggle was futile. Huo Yuhao quickly rushed forward. As he dragged Dai Luoli with one hand, he used his other hand to quickly tap the surveillance soul tool a few times. The sealed milk bottles were quickly pulled from the soul tool, and Huo Yuhao put them in his storage-type soul tool. After all 12 sealed milk bottles were taken out, the soul tool lost power. All soul power undulations disappeared, and it only managed to remain in the sky because of its sails. Huo Yuhao pulled out his Starlight Sapphire storage-type soul tool. The sapphire flashed brightly before the entire high-altitude surveillance soul tool was stored away in his storage-type soul tool. Dai Luoli's mouth was gaping. He thought to himself, what did my elder brother do? Not only is his cultivation shocking, but even his familiarity with soul tools is astounding. He had no idea how to react. He would have attacked the surveillance soul tool and destroyed it. Huo Yuhao couldn't bear to destroy it. It was a technologically advanced Class 8 soul tool. He would take it back for teacher Xian to research it. By researching it, they could expedite their research into their own high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools by 10 years. Huo Yuhao hadn't been wasting time over these past few days. From the city, he had scanned this surveillance soul tool with his spiritual detection a few times. He had also discovered the key points about it. If he hadn't used his spiritual interference to break its connection to the Sun Moon Empire, it would have been able to automatically release a Class 7 protective soul barrier to protect itself. When that happened, it would most certainly shrink rapidly before escaping. It wasn't that the Sun Moon Empire's protective measures weren't tight or secure enough, it was just that they had met someone like Huo Yuhao, who could use his imitation to hide from them. Elder brother, why did you keep it? Dai Luoli asked curiously. Huo Yuhao said, for research purposes, of course. I'm not just a soul master, I'm a soul engineer too. Oh yes, didn't you think that flying was very exciting earlier? Do you want something even more exciting? Dai Luoli was excited as he asked, what's more exciting? This? Huo Yuhao smiled and relaxed his grip on Dai Luoli's armpit. Before Dai Luoli could even react, he was already free-falling. Everything happened too suddenly, and Dai Luoli wasn't prepared at all. His tragic screams echoed in the sky, and he was extremely frightened as he felt a strong sense of weightlessness. Huo Yuhao continued to drift where he was, and wore a smile on his face. He muttered to himself, oh, not bad. The strength of his spiritual power soars when he's fearful. This has further increased the mutation of his martial soul. The feeling of free-falling was extremely exciting. It was so exciting that Dai Luoli tightened his lower abdomen, and felt he was about to wet his pants. He unwittingly unleashed his martial soul. The strands of white fur on his body were exuding a dim red glow, while the king on his forehead turned blood red. His tragic scream stopped as he unleashed his soul power with all his might, hoping to reduce the speed of his descent. After he lost Huo Yuhao's protection, he truly understood why it was so dangerous to be so high up in the sky. The temperature in the sky was much lower than on the ground. The sinister chill and unknown darkness left him terrified. More importantly, he had no way of reducing the speed of his descent. Given his current cultivation, he couldn't control his soul power to reduce the impact of his fall. Why? Why do you have to harm me like this? Why? Dai Luoli slowly revealed a desperate look in his eyes. He hadn't expected this to be the way he was going to die. Just as his mind was going completely blank, he felt his body becoming lighter, and the strong air currents rushing against him as he descended disappeared. The intense chill that he felt also vanished. A hand had grabbed his armpit, and he was drifting in the sky once again. Exciting. A gentle voice sounded in his ears. Dai Luoli turned his head, and saw Huo Yuhao, smiling slightly. Dai Luoli was furious as he roared, were you trying to kill me? Huo Yuhao smiled and replied, didn't you say you wanted to try something exciting? You're still around 1,000 meters from the ground, but you can't take it anymore. If I caught you just before you hit the ground, wouldn't you even be more unable to handle it? Dai Luoli said angrily, that's excitement. I might have died. Even though he had already stopped moving through the air, his butt was still quivering as his legs shook uncontrollably. He was still panting heavily. Look at your fur, Huo Yuhao pointed out to him. Dai Luoli looked down subconsciously, and was surprised to see that his white fur had become a faint red after he unleashed his martial soul. Furthermore, he wasn't in the hysterical state that he was in back then. Do you know what this means? The spiritual element in your martial soul is fusing with your original martial soul, the white tiger's element. When your fur is entirely blood red in color when you release your martial soul under any circumstance, it means the evolution of your martial soul is complete. When that happens, your martial soul should be stronger than typical white tigers, and any offensive soul skills should contain spiritual elements. The corner of Dai Luoli's mouth twitched as he listened to Huo Yuhao's explanation. Are you really my biological brother? Of course, Huo Yuhao said seriously. Dai Luoli forced a laugh and said, can we not use such methods where I'm frightened to death next time? Do you know that I really thought I was going to die just now? Huo Yuhao chortled and said, this will only work if you feel such sensations. Otherwise, how can your martial soul's mutations be entirely triggered and released? If your mutations were so easily released, why haven't you been able to do so over the past 10 years? Intense excitement is the best way to accelerate that release. However, I've already used this method before, so it won't be as effective and inspiring next time. Let's go. He activated his flying-type soul tool, and Huo Yuhao brought Dai Luoli into the air once more. He kept them at roughly 1,000 meters in altitude as they flew west. Huo Yuhao had already used his spiritual power to survey everything as far as he could around them, and had not detected any other high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools. The sky was limitless. Even though he could cover quite a large area with his spiritual power, he couldn't possibly search every inch of the sky. Of course, Huo Yuhao had his plans. These high-altitude aerial surveillance soul tools would only appear in locations of substantial strategic importance. For example, they would only appear over cities responsible for frontier defense, or at important travel routes. He should have an easier time if he searched for those soul tools in those kinds of places. They were all Class 8 soul tools. Such soul tools would be very useful in the future. However, Huo Yuhao had to take a look at the Western Front before all that. He had to see what the Sun Moon Empire had in mind, since they hadn't launched another invasion for such a long time. Huo Yuhao flew towards the west, and quickly covered 200 kilometers. However, he started to slow down after about 150 kilometers. Impressive, the Sun Moon Empire has really invested everything into this. There are aerial surveillance soul tools everywhere. They are covering every single corner like a carpet. There aren't any blind spots at all. Huo Yuhao paused in mid-air, and couldn't help but marvel at the sight. Dai Luoli's vision wasn't that good, but he had support from Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection. He could see masses of aerial surveillance soul tools in the three-dimensional spiritual world of Huo Yuhao's spiritual detection. Within that range, there were more than 50 such soul tools, and there were even more further from their position. Elder brother, do you think you can conceal us from those things? Dai Luoli asked nervously. After flying for a period of time, his emotions had settled down from being scared shitless just now. He knew that Huo Yuhao was doing everything for his own good, and after his martial soul's mutation accelerated with that episode, he clearly felt that his soul power had risen further, and he was about to break into rank 40. Huo Yuhao said, I can't conceal us from every single type they have out there, but my spiritual detection's area of effect is large enough. We just have to avoid those specific types. There were several aerial surveillance soul tools among those in the sky that were specifically meant to detect spiritual power. However, these spiritual power detectors had relatively smaller ranges, and the level of spiritual power they could detect was limited in the end. Huo Yuhao concealed his own spiritual power exceptionally well, and he wasn't afraid of these soul tools discovering him. However, he would be discovered if he used imitation and entered those spiritual power detectors' areas of effect. Those were the soul tools that Huo Yuhao had to avoid. They proceeded forward slowly, Huo Yuhao continuously avoiding the aerial surveillance soul tools that could detect them as they gradually neared the Mingdo mountain range. Huo Yuhao marveled in silence as he flew. The Sun-Moon Empire's fighting style was so much more advanced than the Doluo continent's three native empires. The Sun-Moon Empire emphasized aerial surveillance, and would use Soul Engineer legions to initiate blitz attacks. These Soul Engineers executed accurate and precise attacks and decapitation strikes. In addition to the fact that the Sun-Moon Empire's industrial standards were far superior to those of the Doluo continent's three native empires, the victor in this war was truly hard to predict. Huo Yuhao had to make judgments and evade surveillance soul tools continuously, so he was flying at a much slower speed than normal. It took 15 long minutes before he finally got past where those large swathes of aerial surveillance soul tools reached. The Mingdo mountain range came into view far on the horizon underneath the night sky. Huo Yuhao didn't fly too close. Instead, he stopped when they were about 10 kilometers away from the Mingdo mountain range, and opened the Eye of Destiny on his forehead. His rose-gold Eye of Destiny opened, and Dai Luoli was overcome with astonishment once more. He felt as if his spirit were about to be sucked out of him as he stared at that peculiar vertical eye. Fortunately, his martial soul's spiritual elements had been awakened, and he had certain foundations in spiritual power. He hurriedly turned his gaze away when Huo Yuhao reminded him. The combined effects of Huo Yuhao's Eye of Destiny and his Skull of Destiny allowed him to reach a maximum distance of 10 kilometers, with his spiritual detection in a single direction. Of course, doing so would consume a lot of spiritual power. Huo Yuhao's spiritual power touched the western mountains in the distance, and he gradually started sweeping the area horizontally. Afterwards, he surveyed the base of the western mountain, where the Star Luo Empire's army camps were originally located. Huo Yuhao's expression gradually became extremely grave and solemn. Dai Luoli didn't make a single sound. He didn't even dare to take deep breaths. There were aerial surveillance soul tools all over the place, and one mistake could likely expose their location. He was very intelligent, so he hadn't said a single word ever since they entered this region. He allowed Huo Yuhao to lead him, and all he did was survey and observe his surroundings. Huo Yuhao continued surveilling for more than 10 minutes. He didn't say anything at all when he was done, but turned around and carefully flew back the way they had come. Dai Luoli realized that his elder brother's expression was as black as could be. Evidently, Huo Yuhao had realized something important, but even though he was worried and anxious, he couldn't open his mouth to ask. He could only wait quietly until they flew out of this region. They flew more quickly on the way back, since they had prior experience. Huo Yuhao didn't attempt to destroy the aerial surveillance soul tools when they left the region, which was under heavy surveillance. Instead, he hurriedly sped up and flew towards Imperial Radiant City. Luoli. Yes. Dai Luoli hurriedly acknowledged when he heard Huo Yuhao call his name. Huo Yuhao lowered his voice and said, I'm afraid you can't continue concealing your identity. You will look for your father immediately after you return, and I will take you and fly into that city. You'll find someone to reveal your identity to, and tell him an important piece of intel. The Sun Moon Empire is playing a large and deadly scheme this time. Everyone has been tricked. Ah? Dailuoli felt the fine hair on his neck stand on end when he heard his words. What are you talking about, elder brother? What scheme is that? Huo Yuhao lowered his voice and said, the Sun Moon Empire isn't planning to attack the Star Luo Empire at all. We are not their targets. Wait a minute. Dailuoli was a little confused as he said, why won't they want to invade the Star Luo Empire? They've used Class 9 soul tools and forcefully blasted open a path, and they've also utterly crushed our northwestern field army. Huo Yuhao took a deep breath, and a thread of fear flashed beneath his eyes. He only felt how terrifying the Sun Moon Empire was when war truly broke out. No wonder they had to seal the Star Luo Empire's surveillance so tightly and strictly. They were actually using a double bluff strategy. Do you know what I discovered just now? Let me tell you, the Sun Moon Empire took over the Northwestern Field Army's camp, but there isn't a single soldier from the Sun Moon Empire in that place, or anywhere in its vicinity. There are only voluminous defensive soul tools set up on the Mingdo mountain range, and they've built the Mingdo mountain range into something like a fortress. I still don't understand. Dailuoli muttered a little exasperatedly. Huo Yuhao lowered his voice and said, that means the Sun Moon Empire never had any intentions to invade us. They mobilized their great armies to launch an all-out attack before this, but everything was an illusion, and they did that so that they could deceive us into thinking that they are launching a great invasion against us. Their soldiers haven't crossed the mountain range, so how are they going to launch a great invasion? Those who started this war were those highly mobile Soul Engineer legions, and their rearguard entered the Mingdo mountain range after them and placed large amounts of defensive soul tools on our side to form a defensive front, as well as an aerial surveillance front. They've done all that so that they can sever all information and surveillance from the Mingdo mountain range, so that we are unsure about what their true circumstances or situation is. Dailuoli asked, how are these actions beneficial for them? Huo Yuhao's expression was frighteningly grave and stern. Their actions are beneficial for them because they've managed to conceal their true aim in this war. They never intended to invade the Star Luo Empire with their full strength. Damn it, I should have thought about this a long time ago. If I had been the one launching an invasion, and if I really wanted to invade the Star Luo Empire, I would definitely do everything in one go. How could I pause in the middle like that? I would have gone all the way to destroy the Star Luo Empire's second defense perimeter, and I would have ruined the granaries and all military supplies and stores, or I would pillage and loot the cities. Afterwards, I would consolidate and stabilize defenses in the areas that I have conquered, and wait for more soldiers to arrive. I wouldn't stop my invasion right at the border. Their other goal is to attract the entire continent's attention with this assault. They want everyone to think that they are making a move against the Star Luo Empire. What will that do? This will mobilize the Star Luo Empire's main forces, and this will concentrate those forces along the Western Front. The Doling Empire will mobilize reinforcements as well, and the Heavenly Soul Empire's reinforcements may even be deployed to our Western Front. After all has been said and done, their true intentions will be revealed. If my guess is correct, their true target isn't the Star Luo Empire, but the Heavenly Soul Empire. Huo Yuhao was resolute and decisive when he uttered his final sentence, but there was a lot of pain and agony among all that resolution. Dailuoli finally understood, and he drew a cold breath as he said, Elder brother, your guess is just too frightening. However, isn't the Sun Moon Empire paying an excessively heavy price for this? They've mobilized several elite Soul Engineer legions, and they've expended several Class 9 soul tools. Why would they turn around and attack the Heavenly Soul Empire when they've already made a breakthrough here? Huo Yuhao lowered his voice and said, the war has already begun, and the situation can change at any time. The Sun Moon Empire has their reasons for this choice. First, the Star Luo Empire has the longest history amongst the three native empires. We have been around for 10,000 years. Back then, the Heavenly Soul Empire and the Doling Empire were still one, and they were called the Heaven Do Empire. The Heaven Do Empire's national strength was comparable to ours back then. As of now, even though the Star Luo Empire's strength can't be said to be stronger than the Heavenly Soul Empire and the Do Ling Empire combined, we are still much stronger than any of the two by themselves, and our foundations are deep and solid. Class 9 soul tools are fearsome, and they forcibly tore a hole through our defenses. However, the Northwestern Field Army and the Western Field Army are still in place. Even though we have sustained heavy losses, our losses can't be considered fatal. When an all-out war erupts, the Sun Moon Empire can't be using Class 9 stationary soul cannon shells every day, can they? They have limited numbers of those things, and one use means one less in their stores. They are intended to be used as strategic existences, while the Star Luo Empire will definitely receive full support from the Heavenly Soul Empire and the Do Ling Empire. In that case, it's hard to say who will emerge as the final victor. The Star Luo Empire's foundations are definitely the strongest and deepest in terms of national strength. Comparatively, the Heavenly Soul Empire's national strength is considerably inferior to ours. Furthermore, judging from the Sun Moon Empire's borders, the Heavenly Soul Empire's borders that connect with the Sun Moon Empire are about the same length as our borders with the Sun Moon Empire. If you had to choose, who would you choose to attack? This misdirection is truly scheming and cunning, and I have to admit it's quite spectacular. First, they invade our borders, and they blew open a gap so that their armies could be brought in from the Sun Moon Empire at any time. Afterwards, they took the Ming-Do mountain range. The mountain range in our hands means different things than when the mountain range is in their hands. The Sun Moon Empire is famous for their soul tools, and in addition to the Ming-Do mountain range's fantastic topography, the Sun Moon Empire has an absolute advantage with their surveillance soul tools. Even if we had two more field armies on our side, we might not be able to take down their defenses on the mountain range. They just have to leave a few elite soldiers behind to cooperate with their soul engineers to defend the gap that they have created in the Ming-Do mountain range, and that will be enough. With this gap around, the Star Luo Empire will not dare to mobilize too many soldiers to reinforce the Heavenly Soul Empire, because we have no idea when the Sun Moon Empire will attack us. In the future, if the Sun Moon Empire achieves a conclusive victory on the battlefield against the Heavenly Soul Empire, they can still attack us through the gap in the Ming-Do mountain range if and when they want to. First, they obtain an absolute advantage and restrain us, and then they turn their forces against the Heavenly Soul Empire. This series of tactics has been ingeniously planned, and we have been kept in the dark, because they've blocked all of our reconnaissance and surveillance efforts. Nobody will think that they are changing targets when they've already obtained an absolute advantage. Therefore, you have to report all of this to the White Tiger Duke as quickly as possible, so that he can pass the news to the Heavenly Soul Empire, so the Heavenly Soul Empire can be careful, and he also has to request that the Do Ling Empire reinforce the Heavenly Soul Empire. The Sun Moon Empire is waiting for all our reinforcements to concentrate over here. When that happens, they will launch another invasion against the Heavenly Soul Empire, and our reinforcements will be unable to reach them in time. Dai Luoli's back was soaked with sweat as he listened to Huo Yuhao's analysis. Not in his wildest dreams did he expect such a situation. If everything was as Huo Yuhao had predicted, the Heavenly Soul Empire was truly in danger. Brother, is there a chance that your guess is wrong? Perhaps the Sun Moon Empire doesn't have that in mind at all, and they haven't considered starting an all-out war at all. Childish. Huo Yuhao grunted coldly and said, "Don't dispute and deny the situation, just because it's disadvantageous. Are you trying to be a coward? My guess has almost a 90% chance of being correct. Just relay everything to the White Tiger Duke, and he will understand. Don't mention me, just tell him that you thought about everything yourself. Tell him that you snuck over to the border, and there were coincidentally no aerial surveillance soul tools in a particular region, so you took a look, and surmised all these possibilities afterwards. You have to say everything with sincerity and honesty, because time waits for no man. The Heavenly Soul Empire's defeat will spell disaster for us in the future." Dai Luoli gulped as he felt the pressure coming from Huo Yuhao's body. He nodded and said, "I understand. I will definitely explain everything to my father clearly. Elder brother, you're really a genius. If I were in your shoes, I wouldn't have been able to calculate anything at all. Huo Yuhao forced a laugh and said, "Genius. How can I be a genius if I've only realized what's happening after everything's been said and done? The person from the Sun Moon Empire, who plotted this scheme, is a true genius. Right now, I can only hope that their movements are a little slower, so that we can have a little more time. However, I'm afraid." There was an enormous tent inside the army camp. This tent was different from other tents, because it was made entirely from leather, and it was actually dark red, as if it had been painted over with blood. Lights and lanterns lit up the entirety of this large tent. Soldiers walked in and out continuously, and even though it was already late at night, everyone still seemed extremely busy. "A super-high aerial surveillance Sol tool has gone missing," rang out a voice tinged with astonishment inside this tent. "Yes, Marshal," the messenger spoke respectfully as he knelt on one knee. There was a fair and graceful figure standing within the commander's tent. She was clad in red armor, which perfectly brought out her elegant frame. She had a rose-gold cape draped behind her, and a picture of heroism and valor. A picture of a fiery red phoenix was painted on her chest, its wings outstretched, as if it were about to soar into the sky. Her skin was extremely fair and tender, and seemed like it had been formed from frozen water crystals, and water would be squeezed out if one pinched gently on her skin. Her face was beautiful, but she seemed a little haggard, and her eyebrows were tightly knit together as a contemplative look came over her face. Huo Yuhao would have been astounded if he saw her, because this person, whom the messenger had addressed as Marshal, was the Sun Moon Empire's current empress, and also someone that Huo Yuhao was very familiar with. Juzi. Juzi stood up and started to pace inside her tent. After a few moments, she stopped and lowered her voice as she said, "Pass on my orders immediately, and as quickly as possible increase our surveillance lockdown against the Star Luo Empire, at their western border. Don't allow even a fly to come over. We have to sever every possible surveillance method they possess." "Yes." The messenger bowed, then immediately turned and left. There were several tall officers standing on either side of the tent. They all had looks of admiration and respect on their face as they watched Juzi. The Sun Moon Empire's emperor, Xu Qianran, had appointed Juzi as the commander-in-chief of their 3 armies. When that was first announced, almost every military general and every non-military official thought he was joking. How could a girl only about 20 years old be commander-in-chief? The emperor was clearly appointing people from favoritism. However, Xu Qianran was too overbearing. With the Holy Ghost Church supporting him, he quickly suppressed every voice who objected against his decision, and insisted that Juzi be appointed the 3 armies commander-in-chief. Shortly afterwards, the war quietly entered its preparation stage. Was Xu Qianran appointing someone because he was biased towards that person? Yes, he was, but he had seen this person's abilities, and this person was worth supporting at all costs. Xu Qianran had never doubted Juzi's loyalty and commitment. In other words, Juzi was the one who he trusted the most among everyone beside him. If he hadn't had Juzi all those years ago, Xu Qianran would have died from an assassination attempt by his younger brothers when they were trying to claim the status of crown prince. Juzi had always been beside him and served him for so many years. However, Xu Qianran wasn't just biased towards Juzi enough for him to have so much faith in appointing her commander-in-chief of his 3 armies. More importantly, he approved of her abilities. Many years ago, he had allowed her to join the military. In the beginning, he just wanted her to be trained and tempered in the military, but he had never expected her to have an extraordinary talent for military affairs. Juzi had achieved exemplary results when she led her troops to put down several revolts, and managed to suppress the rebellions with the lowest possible casualties, and within the shortest possible time. Xu Qianran was always surprised whenever Juzi reported the various strategies and plans that she had used in battle. Juzi was simply too talented in military affairs, and the battle strategies and tactics that she used were always different each time. Her ideas were bold and imaginative, yet they were stable and grounded in rationality at the same time. Xu Qianran knew that she was better than he was at such things. Juzi had gradually established her own reputation and prestige within the military within a few short years. Xu Qianran had given direct command of the Phoenix Soul Engineer Legion, one of the 5 great Soul Engineer Legions that formed the hand that protects the nation, over to her. He had contemplated long and hard about his decision to appoint her as commander-in-chief of his 3 armies. He only made up his mind after she devised a scheme and proposal for the coming war. This video will end here.